Boxing King Media in association with Boxer. Delighted to have with me Sky Sports very own Andy Clarke. Andy, it's a permanent gig now, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, it's yeah, I love it. You know, there's nothing better. Covering fights is great, and I enjoyed that. I thought it was a pretty good night. Had an upset out of the away corner with Macedo against JBTKV, which people wouldn't necessarily have seen coming. I thought it was a very worthwhile turnaround for Callum Simpson. Same for Vidal Riley. You know, Nathan Corliss came with ambition to win that fight, but he was just a step behind him in every department, really. And it's a hard night for you when that happens, because there wasn't really all that much he could do. I didn't think he stuck to his guns, and he would have been hoping that Vidal would wilt a bit, but it never really happened. And then the main event I thought was really enjoyable. How Rodriguez got up from a couple of those right hands, I really couldn't tell you, but she managed to get through it. But that was a good performance from Dubois. You know, everybody is excited about her because everybody kind of says the same thing. Whoever you talk to says the same thing, which is that she's got everything you could want, and I do agree with that. And we'll just have to see what happens next with her now, because the belts that she wants are all tied up with Katie Taylor and Chantel Cameron, who obviously rematch in November. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what next year brings.
I mean, even Callum Simpson, you know, he fought a Mexican. These Mexicans, whether they're men or women, looks like the blood is quite thick in them.
Yeah. I mean, we with Macias, if you give him a sniff, then he'll plant his feet and swing, and he'll do that anyway. But if you give him a whiff of any kind of a chance, then he's on you. And he was always trying to find a way into the fight. It didn't quite happen for him, but he finished quite strong actually. Rounds 9 and 10 were maybe his best 2 rounds. So I thought that was definitely a good fight for Simpson. He was calling out Jack Cullen afterwards. I'd probably look for another one. I don't know if I'd put him straight into that one right away. There's no massive rush. You know, he's 13-0. He's got that fan base. You don't need to. Everybody seems to be in a rush these days, and you don't always have to be. But it was good, yeah. It was good, and you know, that's what you want. You want people to come and box out the away corner who are genuinely trying to win.
Absolutely. Andy, and it's quite late, so I don't want to keep you too long, but last night we had some news break that it's signed, Fury, Usyk. Any doubts in your head that this fight might not still happen, or are we confident that it's going to happen?
No, I'm confident. I think normally until you've got the date and the venue, you're quite nervous about it. But I think the way the setup is in Saudi Arabia, that makes me less nervous, because you know that they have these seasons, and finding a date within the season is what they'll be looking at now. The venue's just irrelevant because they'll build the venue, so it's not like they've got to hire anywhere. You know, it's different, isn't it? It's not like taking a site fee to go to one of the big casinos or something like that. So yeah, I am. It's just a question of when. I mean, I don't know what you guys know more than me about this stuff generally. 23rd of December, I've heard January. 23rd of December would be great. And for Fury, you know, I've not really been a massive fan of this Ngannou fight, but if he then fights again before the end of the year in the one that everybody wants to see, then you know, no one can have any complaints, can they?
Stylistically, where do you put Usyk in terms of an opponent? In terms of an opponent for Fury, obviously been in the ring with Wilder and Klitschko, who have different skill sets. But when I spoke to Peter Fury months ago, he said Usyk's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah. I think it's definitely going to be difficult, because he just is very, very skillful. He's just very good. You know, it's not any kind of secret or mystery to an extent, but in another way it kind of is, because how do you find the answer to it? But Fury is a really skillful fighter as well, and he's much, much bigger. So I feel like he's capable of making that size difference count in a way that other people maybe haven't been, and other people actually their size difference hasn't been in heavyweight terms that big, whereas for him it will be. You know, if he comes in at 270, which is where he's been generally, then he's going to be 50 pounds heavier than Usyk. So I do make Fury a favourite in that fight if I had to pick, but I do think it's very difficult for him, and I think that's why he didn't want to do it unless he was going to get absolutely everything he wanted, which I'm assuming he is. because there's easier ways for him to make a ton of money than fighting Usyk.
Would it shock you if Usyk pulled this off?
It wouldn't shock me, no. I would pick Fury. I would pick Fury, but it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't shock me.
I know Eddie Hearn's been quite vocal about Joshua Wilder. Frank looks like he's done his business in silence and announced it. Where do you see Joshua's future now? The Wilder fight doesn't look like it's going to happen next. It looks like there might be another fight. It looks like there's no skills challenge anymore in Saudi Arabia. It looks like there's a new entity. Where does this leave Joshua and his career now? Because ultimately he's got probably a few years left in him as well.
Yeah, it's the Saudi situation, which I'm not on the inside of. It does kind of look, doesn't it, like skills challenge are having some difficulties. I was working for them actually in February on that Jake Paul Tommy Fury fight, and I know at that point they were hoping to get quite a lot done this year, and it hasn't really happened. I don't really know the reasons for that. I hear things about sign-off and release of funds and things like that, whereas the people who are putting on Fury and Garnu and Fury Usyk, I think they may be up higher up the chain of command, and they can just make a decision and then it happens. I don't know whether that's absolutely true, but that's what I hear. And that's just kind of unfortunate if you're pinning your hopes on skills challenge getting things done. Frank Warren's guy, he's kind of an unbelievable bloke, isn't he, really? Because he's been doing this a really, really long time, and he seems to have waited and waited and then waited a bit more and then just casually stepped onto the right ship. That's what he's done, doesn't he? But with AJ, I haven't got a big problem with him having another kind of fight like he's had the last two, because he's doing now what people kind of said he probably should have done after Usyk the first time, but that we knew he couldn't because he had to take the rematch. That was just how that was. But the rebuild, it's not like he's old. What we just don't know about him really is he able to commit and roll the dice and put himself in harm's way. And I don't mean that in a kind of reckless, gung-ho, idiotic way, but if you're going to box at the top of that division or any division, you've got to be able to hold your feet and look to knock the other person out. Therefore, by definition, you give them a better chance of doing it to you. That's just how that is. I could never do it, but that's what they have to do. And is he still prepared to do that or not? I don't really know.
And final one, as you said, there's no official date announced for Fury Usyk. They said they're going to announce that date after the Ngannou fight. There are rumours that it could be December 23rd. Now, we know Eddie Hearn's been quite vocal about December 23rd, about holding Cardiff and holding Wembley for potential Ben Eubank if Ben is licensed. But if not, he's made it very clear that he'll go to the Middle East. So if Fury Usyk does land on 23rd, do we see Eddie Hearn moving, or is this tactical, or is this political, like we always see in boxing?
I feel like Eddie would probably have to move it. Whether he doesn't have to do anything, you know, if he's got somewhere to put it. But I just think it would be such a waste to have them both on the same night. That whole situation with that fight between Ben and Eubank, I don't really want to see it happen anywhere until this situation with UKAD and the border control is resolved. That's just my own personal opinion on it, but I know that it can happen outside of the UK without that having happened. If it's December the 23rd, they've got to wait until the Garnu fight's over, haven't they? Because they don't know what's going to happen. I mean, imagine if Fury just walked onto one. I really don't think it's going to happen, but imagine if he did, or he got cut, or something like that. That's the worry, isn't it? That there's a head clash and he gets cut, or he gets injured and then he couldn't box on December.
And that's very possible with an MMA fighter who's not technically as sound as normal boxers.
Yeah. So you've got to wait. You can't really announce a date before that. But if he gets through that, okay, and it is what we think it'll be, which is kind of a bit of a spar really, and he decides how long it lasts for, which is what I think will happen. Then I don't see any problem at all with him fighting on December the 23rd. That'll be 8 weeks later, something like that.
Okay, Andy, appreciate your time as always. It is late. It is now, 10 to midnight.
I live down the road, so it's fine. Yeah, I live in Upton Park, so it's easy for me.
Safe travels back to Upton Park, and see you at the next one.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Bye.